The night was black as coal tar, and the snow fell like ash from a dying fire. Nathan Cross had seen worse nights. He had seen nights when the wind cut through wool and leather like a saw blade through green wood. He had seen nights when a man could freeze to death standing upright, his last breath turning to ice before it left his lips. But this night, the 23rd of December in the year 1882, this night would become the hinge upon which his entire life would turn. He did not know that yet. He was building a fire. His hands moved with the practiced economy of a man who had built 1,000 fires in 1,000 cold places. The kindling caught. The flame licked upward orange and hungry. He added larger sticks. The fire grew. Beyond the small circle of warmth, the wilderness of Montana Territory stretched away into darkness. The Iron Creek ran somewhere to his left, invisible but audible. The water rushed over stones worn smooth by centuries of current. Nathan listened to it the way some men listen to music. He had come down from the high country 3 days ago. He had wintered alone for 3 years now, trapping and hunting in the Bitterroot Range where the peaks cut the sky like broken teeth. He spoke to no one for months at a time. He preferred it that way. Words reminded him of things he did not wish to remember. Silence was a mercy, but winter was hard even for a man accustomed to solitude. His supplies had run low. He needed salt. He needed coffee. He needed ammunition. So he had descended to the valley where the town of Iron Creek sat beside the river like a scattering of matchboxes. He would buy what he needed. He would leave before anyone asked his name. The fire was strong now. He unrolled his bedding. He would sleep here tonight a mile outside the town and enter in the morning. He preferred to arrive in daylight. Night arrivals drew attention. Questions. He wanted neither. He was reaching for his tin cup when he heard it. A scream, not the scream of an animal. He knew every sound the wilderness made, the shriek of a mountain lion, the death cry of a rabbit in an owl's talons, the bellow of an elk in rut. This was none of those. This was human. This was a woman. And it came from the direction of the river. Nathan moved without thought. His body remembered things his mind tried to forget. Years ago, he had been a different man, a man who ran toward screams instead of away from them. That man was supposed to be dead, but some reflexes do not die. They only sleep. He ran. The snow was 6 inches deep and the ground beneath was frozen uneven. He stumbled once, caught himself, kept moving. The scream came again, closer now. It carried a single word. Help! He crashed through a stand of willows and emerged at the riverbank. The Iron Creek was 40 feet wide here, running fast and black between banks of snow-covered rock. The surface steamed where it met the frozen air. In summer, children swam here. In winter, falling into this water meant death in under 5 minutes. And there, in the middle of the current, clinging to a boulder with both arms, was a woman. Nathan saw her in fragments. A pale face, dark hair plastered to her skull. A dress that had once been blue, but was now the color of wet stone. She was perhaps 20 yards out. The current hammered against her. Her grip was failing. Even as he watched, one hand slipped. She caught herself, but the next slip would be the last. He did not call out. Words would waste time. He scanned the bank. There. A fallen cottonwood half in the water, half out. The trunk was thick as a man's chest. It angled into the current like a bridge that had given up halfway. Nathan ran to it. The bark was slick with ice. He did not slow. He stepped onto the trunk and kept moving. The wood creaked beneath his weight. Water surged around the submerged end, white and furious. He reached the point where the trunk disappeared beneath the surface. The woman was 10 feet away. She had seen him now. Her eyes were wide and white. She did not call out. She was saving her strength. Smart girl, Nathan thought. He gauged the distance, the current, the cold already eating through his boots. 10 feet. He could not reach her from here. The tree went no farther. He would have to go in. He had been in cold water before. in the war fording rivers in November, in the mountains crossing snowmelt streams. He knew what it felt like, the shock, the way your lungs forgot how to work, the way your heart began to hammer as if trying to escape your chest. He knew, and he went in anyway. The cold was a fist that closed around his entire body. His breath stopped. His vision went white at the edges, but his hands kept moving. He grabbed the woman's arm. She stared at him. Her lips were blue. Her teeth chattered so hard he could hear them clicking. "Hold on," he wanted to say, but his jaw would not work. He pulled. She let go of the boulder. For one terrible second, the current had both of them. It tried to drag them downstream, away from the tree, away from the shore, away from any chance of survival. Nathan's boots scrabbled for purchase on the submerged rocks. He found one, then another. He hauled the woman toward him and wrapped one arm around her waist. She weighed nothing. The current weighed everything. He turned. The tree was still there, 3 steps away. He took 1 step. The woman's head lolled against his shoulder. She was losing consciousness. 2 steps. His legs were going numb. The cold was inside him now, filling his chest like black water. 3 steps. His hand closed on the tree trunk. He pulled them both onto the log. The woman's weight nearly toppled them. He adjusted, slung her over his shoulder, and began the walk back to shore. Each step was a negotiation between balance and collapse. The wood was ice. His boots were ice. His hands were ice. But he kept moving because stopping meant dying, and he was not ready to die. Not tonight. Not before he found her. He reached the bank and fell forward onto solid ground. The woman spilled from his shoulder into the snow. She was not moving. Nathan rolled onto his knees. His hands shook violently, but he forced them to obey. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck. There, a pulse, faint and fast, but there. He looked at her face. She was young, younger than he had thought, 20 at most. Her skin was the color of candle wax. Ice crystals clung to her eyelashes. A bruise darkened her left cheekbone purple-black against the pallor. Not from the river, older than that. Who did this to you, Nathan thought. But the question could wait. First warmth, first life. He scooped her into his arms and ran back toward his fire. The flames were still burning. He laid her down beside the heat and began stripping away her wet clothing. He did not think about modesty. There was no room for shame when death stood this close. He pulled off her dress, her undergarments, everything that held water. He wrapped her in his own dry blankets. He pulled her close to the fire. Then he stripped off his own soaked coat and boots. The cold had its claws in him now. His hands would not stop shaking. He built up the fire until it roared. He rubbed the woman's arms, her legs trying to force blood back to her extremities. Her skin felt like clay. But slowly, degree by degree, color began to return. Her lips faded from blue to pale pink. Her breathing deepened. Nathan sat back. His own shivers were subsiding. He pulled on a dry shirt and wrapped a blanket around his shoulders, and then he waited. An hour passed. The woman did not wake. Nathan watched her face in the firelight. She was small-boned and fine-featured. The bruise on her cheek stood out like a brand. There were other marks, too. A ring of bruises around her left wrist. A cut above her eyebrow, half-healed. These were not the injuries of a fall or an accident. Someone had hurt her. Someone had hurt her many times. Nathan felt something stir in his chest. An old anger. He had thought that anger dead, buried with Sarah and Emma, but it was not dead. It had only been waiting. The woman's eyes opened. She stared up at the night sky for a long moment, as if trying to remember where she was. Then her gaze found Nathan. She did not scream. She did not flinch. She simply looked at him with eyes the color of smoke. Nathan spoke quietly. "You are safe." The woman blinked. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She tried again, a whisper barely audible. "Who are you, Nathan Cross?" Grace's hand moved to her stomach, a brief, unconscious gesture. But Nathan saw it, and he understood. "You are carrying his child," he said. It was not a question. Grace's eyes widened. She pulled the blanket tighter. "How did you—" Nathan gestured to the way she held herself. "I have seen it before," he said. "My wife, when she carried our daughter." Grace stared at him. "You have a daughter." Nathan's throat closed. Had he said, past tense? Grace opened her mouth, then closed it. "I am sorry," she whispered. Nathan shook his head. He did not want sympathy. He did not deserve it. "Tell me about the explosion," he said. Grace's hand returned to her stomach. She held it there as if protecting something. "My father and Daniel were working late," she said, "repairing a wagon axle. It was in July, a hot evening. I was supposed to bring them supper, but Margaret sent me on an errand. When I came back, the fire had already started. The forge, the whole building. They could not get out in time." "Who told you they could not get out, Margaret? She was the one who found them." "Of course she was," Nathan thought. He stood and walked to the edge of the firelight. The snow had stopped. The stars were coming out hard and bright and cold. He looked up at them and felt the weight of all the years pressing down on him. 3 years. 3 years of hunting a ghost. And now tonight he had stumbled across a girl who might be the key to everything, or she might be a distraction, a detour from his purpose. He turned back to Grace. She was watching him with those smoke-colored eyes. "Tell me the truth," he said. "Does Margaret know about the baby?" Grace's face went pale. "Yes," she whispered, "and she wants it gone." Grace nodded. "She has been giving me—" She stopped. Her hand moved to her mouth. "Giving you what? Tea, bitter tea, every night. She says it will keep me healthy." Grace's voice broke. "But I do not feel healthy. I feel sick, dizzy. My hands shake." Nathan crossed back to her. He knelt down so they were eye level. "Listen to me," he said. "You cannot go back there. Not tonight. Not ever. I have nowhere else to go. You can stay here, with me." Grace shook her head. "You do not understand. She owns me, by law. If I run, she will send the sheriff. They will bring me back. Then we will go to the sheriff first. We will tell him what she has done." Grace laughed again. That same dry, hopeless sound. "The sheriff is James Harlow, Margaret's cousin. He will never believe me." Nathan felt the trap closing, every avenue blocked, every door locked. This Margaret had built a cage around Grace so tight and so complete that even the law could not reach inside. But Nathan was not the law, and he had never been good at following rules. "All right," he said, "we do this differently. How we find proof, we find witnesses. We build a case so strong that even a corrupt sheriff cannot ignore it." Grace looked at him as if he had suggested building a ladder to the moon. "Why would you do that?" she asked. "You do not know me." Nathan met her eyes. "Because 3 years ago he said someone hurt people I loved, and I did not stop them. I was not there. I failed." Grace's expression softened. "That was not your fault." "Yes," Nathan said quietly, "it was. But I can be here now. For you." Grace stared at him for a long moment, then so softly he almost missed it. "Who hurt them?" Nathan hesitated. The name sat on his tongue like a stone. He had not spoken it aloud in 3 years. But something about this girl, this broken pregnant girl, who had been pushed into a frozen river and somehow still had the strength to ask questions, something about her made him want to tell the truth. "A woman," he said. "A woman who worked for my wife. She was supposed to help care for our daughter while I was away hunting. Instead, she robbed us. And when my wife discovered the theft, the woman set fire to the house. Sarah and Emma died in the fire." Grace's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, God." "The woman disappeared. I have been looking for her ever since. Did you find her?" Nathan looked into the fire. The flames danced and twisted. "Maybe," he said. Grace frowned. "What do you mean?" "Maybe I mean the woman who killed my family used a different name back then, but descriptions match, timeline matches, and she has a history of marrying men who die in convenient accidents." Grace's face went white. "You think Margaret—" Nathan nodded. "The woman who killed my wife called herself Margaret Thorne. She was in Wyoming Territory 3 years ago. Then she disappeared. And 6 months later, a woman calling herself Margaret Harlow appeared in Iron Creek, Montana. She married your father. a widower, a man with property and a daughter. No, Grace whispered. No, that is impossible. Is it? Nathan leaned forward. Your father died in a fire. My wife died in a fire. Your father's death put Margaret in control of his estate. My wife's death would have put Margaret Thorne in control of mine if I had not come back and found the bodies first. Grace was shaking her head. But my father's death was an accident. Everyone said so. Everyone said my wife's death was an accident too. Until I started asking questions. Until I found the can of kerosene hidden in the barn. The one that should not have been there. Grace's breathing had gone shallow. She looked like she might be sick. Nathan reached out and steadied her shoulder. Breathe, he said. Just breathe. She did. In and out. In and out. Finally she looked up at him. If what you are saying is true, she said, then Margaret killed my father. And Daniel. And she is trying to kill me, not you. Nathan's voice turned hard as iron. The baby. She needs you alive to keep up appearances. But the baby is a threat. Proof that you were involved with someone. Proof that you are not the obedient, broken girl she tells everyone you are. Grace pressed both hands to her stomach. Her face was a mask of horror and grief. How do we stop her? The words barely made it past her lips. We prove what she is, Nathan said. We show the town, we make them see. How I do not know yet, but we will figure it out. Nathan met her eyes. I promise you, Grace Sullivan, that woman will not hurt you again. Grace stared at him, and for the first time since she had opened her eyes, something changed in her face. Not hope exactly. Hope was too fragile for what she had endured, but something like it. Something small and fierce and stubborn. All right, she said. I will trust you. Nathan nodded. Then we start tomorrow. Tonight you rest. He stood and began arranging the blankets into a makeshift bed. Grace watched him. Where will you sleep? She asked. Here. Nathan gestured to the other side of the fire. I have slept in worse places. Grace lay down. She pulled the blankets up to her chin and stared at the stars. Nathan settled on his own side of the fire and did the same. The silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, just present. After a long while, Grace spoke into the darkness. Mr. Cross. Yes? Why did you really come to Iron Creek to find the woman who killed my family? Nathan's answer was simple, direct, and to make her answer for it. And now I have found her. And you are going to help me make her pay. Grace was quiet. Then, what if I am wrong? What if Margaret is not the same woman? Nathan looked across the fire at her. Then I will help you anyway. Because wrong is wrong, and what she is doing to you is the worst kind of wrong. Grace's eyes were wet in the firelight. She blinked, and the tears slid down her temples into her hair. Thank you, she whispered. Nathan did not respond. He simply watched the stars and listened to the river and thought about all the ways a man could seek justice without becoming a monster himself. It was going to be a narrow path. But he had walked narrow paths before. Behind him, Grace's breathing slowed and deepened. She had fallen asleep. Nathan stayed awake. He fed the fire. He listened to the night. And he made a silent promise to the girl across from him and to the ghosts that haunted him. No more, he thought. No more women hurt. No more children lost. No more turning away. This ends in Iron Creek. Morning came cold and clear. Nathan woke before dawn and rebuilt the fire. Grace still slept curled on her side with one hand tucked under her cheek. In sleep she looked even younger, 16 maybe, a child playing at adulthood. But the bruises on her face told a different story. Those were not the marks of childhood. Nathan stood and walked to the river. The water was calmer now. In daylight it looked almost peaceful. Hard to believe that 12 hours ago it had nearly claimed 2 lives. He knelt and washed his face. The cold bit his skin. He welcomed it. Cold meant alive. Cold meant awake. When he returned to camp, Grace was sitting up. She had wrapped the blanket around herself like a shawl. Her hair hung in dark tangles past her shoulders. She was staring at the fire. How do you feel? Nathan asked. Grace looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed but clear. Sore, she said, cold, alive. Nathan poured water into his tin pot and set it over the flames. He added coffee grounds. The smell began to fill the air, rich and bitter and real. "I only have 1 cup," he said. "I do not need coffee, you do." Nathan did not look at her. "You need food and warmth and a plan, in that order." Grace pulled the blanket tighter. "I need to go back," she said. "If I do not, Margaret will, she will, what?" "Come looking for you," Grace nodded. "Good," Nathan said. "Let her come. Let her show the town what she really is. You do not understand. She will not come herself. She will send the sheriff. She will say I ran away, that I am disturbed, dangerous, and you will tell them the truth." Grace laughed bitterly. "They will not believe me. They never believe me." Nathan poured coffee into the cup and handed it to her. "Then we make them believe." Grace took the cup. Her hands were shaking, not from the cold. She sipped and winced at the heat. "How?" she asked. "We find allies, people who have seen what she does, people who will stand with you. There are no such people." Nathan crouched down so he was eye level with her. "Listen to me," he said. "In every town there are people who know. They may not speak. They may not act. But they know. We find them. We give them a reason to speak." Grace shook her head. "You do not know Iron Creek." "No, but I know people. And I know that silence is not the same as agreement." Nathan stood. "Drink your coffee." "Then we are going into town." Grace's eyes widened. Now, before Margaret has time to spin her story, but I have nothing to wear, my dress." Nathan had already thought of this. He walked to his pack and pulled out a clean shirt and a pair of wool trousers. "They will be too large," he said, "but they will be dry and warm." Grace stared at the clothes. "I cannot wear trousers." "Why not?" "Because," she trailed off, "because Margaret says it is indecent." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Margaret is not here." Grace took the clothes. She stood and walked behind a tree to change. Nathan turned away and focused on packing his gear. When Grace emerged, she looked like a child wearing her father's clothes. The shirt hung to her knees. The trousers were rolled at the ankles, but her color was better, and her eyes were sharper. Nathan handed her his extra coat. "It is a mile to town," he said. "Can you walk? I can walk." They set out. The sun was just clearing the mountains, throwing long shadows across the snow. Nathan led the way, breaking a trail. Grace followed in his footsteps. Neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the crunch of snow and the distant call of a raven. As they walked, Nathan's mind turned over the problem like a man examining a lock. Margaret Harlow had built a fortress around herself. Legal guardianship, a sympathetic sheriff, a town willing to look the other way. Breaking that fortress would require precision and leverage. "Tell me about the people in town," Nathan said over his shoulder. Grace was quiet for a moment. "What do you want to know? Who is most likely to help you?" "No one." Nathan stopped and turned. Grace nearly ran into him. "Think," he said, "there must be someone. A friend, a neighbor. Someone who showed you kindness." Grace's face was unreadable. "There was a woman," she said slowly. "Mrs. Palmer. Ruth Palmer. She owns the fabric shop. She used to give me scraps for sewing." "Did she ask questions?" "No. But she looked at me, really looked, like she saw." Nathan nodded. "That is where we start. Who else?" "The Reverend. Joseph Carter. He knew my father." "Were they close?" Grace hesitated. "My father saved his life once, years ago. Reverend Carter was—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He drank badly. My father took him in, helped him stop. So the Reverend owes your father—" "Owed." Grace's voice was flat, past tense. "Debt does not die with the debtor," Nathan said. "If Reverend Carter is a man of honor, he will pay what he owes to your father by protecting you." Grace did not look convinced. "And if he is not a man of honor, then we move on to the next name." They continued walking. The town came into view, a cluster of wooden buildings huddled against the cold. Smoke rose from chimneys. A dog barked somewhere. It looked like 100 other frontier towns Nathan had passed through, small isolated. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. The kind of place where secrets festered. "We will start with the doctor," Nathan said. Grace stumbled. "What?" "You said Margaret has been giving you tea. We need a doctor to examine you, to confirm you have been poisoned." Grace's hand went to her stomach. "No," she said. "No. If a doctor examines me, he will know about the baby. He already knows, Grace. Or he suspects. Small towns do not keep those kinds of secrets. You do not understand. If people know," her voice broke, "they will call me a whore. They will say I deserved everything Margaret did." Nathan stopped again. He turned and looked at her. "They will not say that," he said quietly, "because we will not let them. You loved a man. He loved you. He died before you could marry. That is tragedy, not sin." Grace's eyes filled. "The church does not see it that way. Then the church is wrong." Nathan held her gaze. "You are not dirty, Grace. You are not broken. You are a woman who has endured hell and survived it. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise." A tear slid down Grace's cheek. She wiped it away quickly. "All right," she whispered. "All right." They entered the town. A few people were on the street. A man shoveling snow, a woman carrying a basket. They turned to stare at Grace and Nathan. Whispers started immediately. Nathan ignored them. He walked with purpose, his hand resting lightly on Grace's elbow, protective but not possessive. The doctor's office was a small building near the edge of town. A wooden sign hung above the door. "Samuel Brennan, physician." Nathan knocked. A moment later, the door opened. A man in his mid-40s stood there, thin spectacles, tired eyes. He looked at Nathan, then at Grace. His expression changed. "Grace," he said. "My God, I heard you were missing." Margaret was frantic. "Margaret pushed her into the river," Nathan said flatly. Dr. Brennan blinked. "What?" Nathan stepped forward. "My name is Nathan Cross. I pulled this girl out of the Iron Creek last night. She was half frozen. And she tells me you have been treating injuries for months. Injuries that did not come from accidents." Dr. Brennan's face paled. He looked at Grace. "Is this true?" Grace met his eyes. "You know it is true," she said quietly. "You saw the bruises, the burns. You asked me how it happened, and I lied, because I was afraid. But you knew Dr. Brennan. You knew." The doctor's shoulders sagged. He stepped back. "Come inside," he said. The office was small and cluttered, shelves lined with bottles and books. A single examination table. Dr. Brennan gestured for Grace to sit. She did. Nathan remained standing by the door. Dr. Brennan pulled up a stool. He did not speak for a long moment. Finally he said, "I should have done something sooner." "Yes," Nathan said, "you should have." The doctor flinched, but he nodded. "You are right." He looked at Grace. "What do you need from me?" Nathan answered. "We need you to examine her. Document every injury, and we need you to test for poison." "Poison?" Dr. Brennan's head snapped up. "Margaret has been giving her tea," Nathan said. "Bitter tea. Every night. Grace has been experiencing dizziness, shaking hands, nausea. The color drained from Dr. Brennan's face. His hands began to tremble. "Dear God." "Can you test for it?" Nathan asked. "I can test her blood. If there is heavy metal poisoning." He trailed off. He stood and began pulling supplies from a shelf. "This will take time," he said. "How long?" "A few hours for preliminary results." Dr. Brennan turned to Grace. "I need to draw blood, and I need to examine you." "Thoroughly." Grace nodded. She looked at Nathan. He understood. He stepped outside. The street was busier now. More people, more stairs. Nathan leaned against the wall and waited. He watched the town move around him. He was mapping it in his mind, identifying strengths, weaknesses, allies, enemies. A woman approached. She was perhaps 50, gray-haired, dressed in practical wool. She stopped a few feet away and looked at Nathan. "You are the stranger who pulled Grace Sullivan out of the river," she said. "I am." The woman studied him. Then she extended her hand. "My name is Ruth Palmer." Nathan shook her hand. "Nathan Cross." Ruth's grip was firm. "I heard you were asking questions about Margaret Harlow. Word travels fast." In a town this size, Ruth's smile was bitter. Word travels at the speed of sound. She lowered her voice. Is it true? Did Margaret push Grace? Nathan nodded. And worse. Ruth closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. I knew, she whispered. I knew something was wrong, but I did nothing. Why? Because I am a coward, Mr. Cross. Because I lost my own daughter 5 years ago to a violent man, and I did not stop him. I told myself it was not my business. I told myself I was wrong about what I saw, and my daughter paid the price. Ruth's voice shook. I will not make that mistake again. Nathan looked at her. What will you do? Whatever you need me to do. Nathan considered this. I need witnesses, he said, people willing to testify, to say what they saw. I will testify. You will lose customers, friends. Margaret has allies. Ruth straightened her spine. Then I will lose them, but I will not lose my soul again. Nathan nodded. There will be others, a reverend, a sheriff. We are building a case. Ruth's eyebrows rose. Sheriff Hayes is Margaret's cousin, I know, but he is also the law. If we have enough evidence, he will have no choice. You have more faith in him than I do. Not faith. Nathan's smile was cold. Leverage. Before Ruth could respond, the door to the doctor's office opened. Dr. Brennan stepped out. His face was grim. Mr. Cross, he said, you need to see this. Nathan followed him inside. Grace was sitting on the examination table, fully dressed. Her face was pale. Dr. Brennan led Nathan to a small desk. On it was a glass vial filled with dark liquid. Blood. I ran a preliminary test, Dr. Brennan said. There are trace amounts of lead in her system. Lead, Nathan repeated. From what she described, I believe Margaret has been dosing her with lead acetate. It is sweet-tasting, easy to hide in tea or food. In small doses, it causes exactly the symptoms Grace described. Dizziness, tremors, nausea. What about the baby? Dr. Brennan's jaw tightened. If the poisoning continues, she will miscarry and possibly die. Nathan's hands curled into fists. Can you save her? I can treat the symptoms, flush the lead from her system. But it will take weeks, maybe months, and she cannot go back to that house. She will not, Nathan said. Dr. Brennan looked at him. You are putting yourself at risk, Mr. Cross. Margaret has powerful friends. So do I, Nathan said. As of today. Dr. Brennan hesitated. Then he extended his hand. Count me among them. Nathan shook it. He turned to Grace. She was staring at the vial of her own blood. Come on, he said gently. We have more people to see. They left the doctor's office. Ruth Palmer was still waiting outside. When she saw Grace, her hand flew to her mouth. Oh, child, she whispered. Grace tried to smile. It came out broken. Hello, Mrs. Palmer. Ruth stepped forward and without hesitation wrapped Grace in a hug. Grace stiffened. Then slowly she relaxed. Her arms came up. She held on to Ruth like a drowning woman holding driftwood. You are safe now, Ruth murmured. You are safe. Over Ruth's shoulder, Grace's eyes found Nathan's, and in them he saw the question she could not voice. Was she really safe? Or was this just the eye of the storm? Nathan did not have an answer yet, but he would find one, because he had made a promise, and Nathan Cross did not break his promises, even when keeping them meant going to war. The fabric shop smelled of wool and lavender. Ruth Palmer led Grace and Nathan through the front room, past bolts of cloth stacked floor to ceiling, into a small parlor at the back. A fire burned in the hearth. Ruth gestured for Grace to sit in the chair closest to the warmth. Stay here, Ruth said. Both of you. I will bring tea. Real tea. Not poison. Grace flinched at the word. Ruth noticed. She knelt in front of Grace and took her hands. I am sorry, she said softly. That was thoughtless of me. It is all right, Grace whispered. It is not all right. Nothing about this is all right. Ruth squeezed her hands once, then stood. But we are going to make it right. I promise you that. She disappeared into the next room. Nathan heard the clatter of dishes. He remained standing by the door watching the street through the window. People passed. Some glanced toward the shop. Word was spreading. By nightfall, the entire town would know that Grace Sullivan had returned, and that a stranger had brought her. Margaret would know, too. Nathan wondered what she would do. A woman like that, backed into a corner, would not surrender quietly. She would fight, and she would be dangerous. Grace's voice pulled him back. "Mr. Cross." He turned. "Yes." "Why are you helping me?" "Really?" Nathan considered the question. The true answer was complicated, layered. Part revenge, part guilt, part something he could not name. But Grace deserved honesty. "I told you about my wife and daughter," he said. "Yes. What I did not tell you is what happened after they died, after I buried them." Grace waited. "I spent 3 years looking for the woman who killed them. I tracked her across Wyoming, into Montana. I lost her trail a dozen times, found it again, always one step behind." Nathan paused. "And in those 3 years, I passed through towns like this one. I saw women with bruises, children with broken arms, men who drank too much, and wives who walked on eggshells. I saw all of it, and I did nothing." "Why?" "Because it was not my business, because I had my own mission, my own pain." Nathan's jaw tightened. "And because it was easier to look away." "You cannot save everyone," Grace said quietly. "No, but I could have saved someone." Nathan met her eyes. "You are that someone, Grace. You are my chance to stop being the man who looks away." Before Grace could respond, Ruth returned with a tray, 3 cups, a teapot. She poured and handed cups to Grace and Nathan. Then she settled into a chair across from them. "Now," she said, "tell me what you need." Nathan explained his plan. Gather witnesses, document the abuse, build a case strong enough that even a corrupt sheriff could not ignore. He spoke clearly, methodically. Ruth listened without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded. "I will testify," she said. "I have seen the bruises on Grace for months. I will swear to it before God and the law." "Thank you," Grace said. Her voice broke on the words. Ruth reached across and touched her knee. "You do not need to thank me, child. I should have done this months ago." She looked at Nathan. "Who else are you recruiting, Reverend Carter?" Ruth's eyebrows rose. "Joseph. He is a good man, but he is weak." "Weak how?" "He struggles with the bottle. Always has." "Your father helped him," Ruth said to Grace. "But after Thomas died, Joseph started slipping again. I have smelled whiskey on him during Sunday services." Nathan absorbed this. A drunk reverend would not make a strong witness, but a repentant one might. "Especially if we appeal to his conscience," Nathan said. Ruth considered. It might work. Joseph loved Thomas like a brother. If he believes Margaret killed him— "She did," Grace said. Her voice was hard. "I know she did." Ruth and Nathan both looked at her. Grace's hands were clenched in her lap. Her face was pale, but her eyes were fierce. "The explosion was no accident," she said. "My father was careful, meticulous. He would never leave powder near an open flame." "Tell me about the day he died," Nathan said gently. Grace took a breath. It was in July. A hot evening. Father and Daniel were working on a wagon repair. I was supposed to bring them supper at 6, but Margaret sent me to Mrs. Palmer's shop. She said she needed thread. Urgently. "Convenient," Nathan muttered. "What are you thinking?" Ruth asked. "I am thinking we need to talk to Sheriff Hayes, and Reverend Carter, and anyone else who was there that night." "The sheriff will not help you," Ruth said. "He is Margaret's cousin." "Blood is not always thicker than justice," Nathan said, "especially when the evidence is overwhelming. And if it is not overwhelming, then we make it overwhelming." Ruth studied him. "You are a dangerous man, Mr. Cross. Only to people who deserve it." A knock on the front door interrupted them. Ruth rose. "Stay here," she said. She disappeared into the shop. Nathan heard voices, low, urgent. Then footsteps. Ruth returned. Her face was tight. "It is Reverend Carter," she said. "He wants to see Grace." Nathan stood. "Is he alone?" "Yes, let him in." A moment later, Reverend Joseph Carter entered the parlor. He was a tall man, thin as a fence post, with graying hair and red-rimmed eyes. He looked at Grace and his face crumpled. "Oh, child," he said, "thank God you're alive. Margaret said you had run away, that you had stolen money and disappeared." Grace stood. Her hands were shaking. "I did not run, Reverend. She pushed me." Reverend Carter's eyes widened. "What, into the river? She tried to kill me." The Reverend looked at Nathan. "Who are you, Nathan Cross? I pulled her out." Reverend Carter sank into a chair. He put his face in his hands. "I knew," he whispered. "I knew something was wrong. I saw the bruises. I heard the rumors. But I told myself it was not my place to interfere." "It is your place now," Nathan said. The Reverend looked up. His eyes were wet. "What can I do? Tell the truth. Stand with Grace. Help us prove what Margaret has done." Reverend Carter's hands trembled. He clasped them together. "If I do that," he said, "Margaret will destroy me. She knows things. About me. About my past." Nathan leaned forward. "What things?" The Reverend swallowed. "I have struggled with drink for years. Margaret has threatened to tell the church council, to have me removed. So let her," Nathan said. "Confess it yourself. Take away her weapon. I will lose everything." "You already lost everything," Nathan said quietly, "the day you let Thomas Sullivan's daughter suffer and did nothing." The words hit like a slap. Reverend Carter flinched. Then slowly he nodded. "You are right," he said. "You are absolutely right." He stood. "I will testify. Whatever you need, I will do it." "Thank you," Grace whispered. Reverend Carter crossed to her. He took her hands. "Thomas saved my life," he said. "He pulled me out of the gutter when I had given up. He gave me work, purpose, a reason to stay sober. I owe him everything, and I owe you the truth." Grace's eyes filled. "He loved you," she said. "He said you were the brother he never had." The Reverend's face twisted. "Then I will be the brother you need now." Nathan allowed himself a small measure of satisfaction. 3 allies, a doctor, a shopkeeper, a reverend, not an army, but a start. "We need to move quickly," Nathan said. "Margaret will not sit idle. She will be planning her next move." "What do you think she will do?" Ruth asked. "She will try to discredit Grace," Nathan said. "Paint her as unstable, dangerous. She will say Grace is lying, that the bruises are self-inflicted, that the pregnancy is proof of loose morals." Ruth's face hardened. "Then we strike first," how Reverend Carter asked. "We go to Sheriff Hayes, together, all of us. We present the evidence. We demand an investigation." "The sheriff is her cousin," Ruth repeated. "I know, but he is also an elected official. If enough people stand against him, he will have no choice." "And if he refuses?" Nathan's voice went cold. "Then we go over his head, to the territorial marshal, to the governor if necessary." "That will take weeks," Ruth said. "Then Grace stays here, with you, where Margaret cannot reach her." Grace shook her head. "No, I will not hide." Nathan turned to her. "Grace, I will not hide," she repeated. Her voice was stronger now, steadier. "I have been hiding for 8 months, living in fear, swallowing my voice. No more." She stood. "If we are going to face Margaret, I will be there. I will look her in the eye, and I will tell everyone what she did." Nathan studied her. The girl who had been pulled from the river half dead and broken was gone. In her place stood someone harder, someone who had found her spine. "It is dangerous," he said. "I know. If you testify, Margaret will attack you. She will say terrible things. Let her." Grace's eyes were clear. "I am done being afraid." Ruth smiled. "There is Thomas Sullivan's daughter." Reverend Carter nodded. "I will stand with her." "As will I," Ruth said. Nathan looked at the 3 of them, a pregnant girl, a shopkeeper, a drunk reverend. Not the allies he would have chosen, but they were the allies he had. And sometimes that was enough. "All right," he said. "We do this tomorrow, first light. We go to the sheriff together." "What about tonight?" Grace asked. "Tonight," Ruth said, "you stay here. With me. I have a spare room. You will be safe." "And you, Mr. Cross?" Reverend Carter asked. Nathan picked up his hat. "I have business to attend to." "What business?" Nathan's smile did not reach his eyes. "I am going to visit an old friend." He left before they could ask more questions. Outside the sun was setting. The temperature had dropped. Nathan's breath misted in front of him. He walked with purpose through the town, ignoring the stares, until he reached a small house at the edge of the main street. A sign hung by the door. Sheriff James Hayes. Nathan knocked, hard. The door opened. A man in his late 40s stood there, thick mustache, suspicious eyes. He looked Nathan up and down. "Can I help you?" "Sheriff Hayes." "That is me. My name is Nathan Cross. I need to talk to you about your cousin, Margaret Harlow." The sheriff's expression closed. "I do not discuss family matters with strangers, even when the family matter is attempted murder." Hayes's hand moved toward the pistol at his hip. "You best watch your mouth, stranger." Nathan did not move. "I pulled a girl out of the Iron Creek last night. Grace Sullivan. Your cousin pushed her in." "That is a damned lie." Hayes stepped forward. "Grace ran away, stole money. Margaret has been frantic. Margaret has been poisoning her." Nathan interrupted. "Beating her, trying to kill her unborn child, and I can prove it." Hayes' face went red. "Get off my property. Now." Nathan held his ground. "I have witnesses. A doctor's report, testimony from people who saw the abuse. You can ignore it, but when the territorial marshal arrives, he will not. There is no territorial marshal coming. There will be, tomorrow. I am sending a telegram." The sheriff's hand closed on his pistol grip. "You are threatening me. I am informing you." Nathan's voice was calm, flat. "You have a choice, Sheriff. You can do your job, investigate the allegations, arrest Margaret Harlow, or you can protect her. And when this goes to trial, and it will go to trial, you will be charged as an accessory." Hayes drew his pistol. "Get out." Nathan looked at the gun, then at the sheriff. "Tomorrow morning," he said. 10 o'clock, the church. "We will present our evidence. You can be there as the law, or you can be there as a defendant. Your choice." He turned and walked away. He did not run. He did not hurry. He simply walked. Behind him, he heard the sheriff curse, but Hayes did not shoot, and he did not follow. Nathan had gambled that Hayes was a coward. It seemed he had gambled correctly. He returned to Ruth Palmer's shop. The windows were dark. He knocked softly. Ruth opened the door. "Is it done?" she asked. "It is done." Nathan stepped inside. "How is Grace asleep?" "Finally." Ruth closed the door. "What did the sheriff say?" "He drew his gun on me." Ruth's eyes widened. And I told him he could arrest his cousin or go down with her." Nathan shrugged. "We will see which he chooses. You are either very brave or very foolish, Mr. Cross." "Probably both." Ruth smiled. "There is stew on the stove. You should eat." Nathan followed her to the kitchen. They ate in silence. The stew was good, simple and warm. When they finished, Ruth looked at him across the table. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Do you believe we can win this?" Nathan set down his spoon. "I believe we have to try." "That is not an answer." "No, but it is the truth." Ruth nodded slowly. "My daughter's name was Lily," she said. "She was 16, beautiful, kind. She married a man who seemed decent, but after the wedding he changed. He drank. He hit her. I saw the bruises. I said nothing." Ruth's voice was steady, but her eyes were far away. "One night he beat her so badly she could not get up. She died 3 days later." Nathan said nothing. There was nothing to say. "I told myself it was not my fault," Ruth continued, "that I could not have known, that I was powerless. But the truth is, I was a coward. I chose comfort over courage, and my daughter paid the price." She looked at Nathan. "I will not make that choice again." "You are making it right now," Nathan said, "by standing with Grace. I hope so." Ruth stood and began clearing the dishes. "You can sleep in the front room. There is a cot. It is not much, but it is more than enough. Thank you." Ruth paused. "Mr. Cross, yes. When this is over, when Margaret is behind bars or hanged or whatever fate she meets, what will you do?" Nathan had not thought that far ahead. "I do not know," he admitted. "Will you stay?" He looked at her. "Why do you ask?" "Because that girl upstairs?" Grace, she looks at you like you are the only solid thing in a world that keeps shifting. And I think—" Ruth hesitated. "I think you look at her the same way." Nathan felt something tighten in his chest. "She is young," he said. "She is strong. And she will be stronger when this is done." Ruth met his eyes. "Do not walk away from her because you think you do not deserve happiness. Sarah and Emma would not want that. How do you know their names?" "You said them, earlier, when you thought no one was listening." Nathan looked away. "I am not good for her. Let her decide that." Before Nathan could respond, a crash echoed from upstairs. Glass breaking. Ruth's eyes went wide. "Grace," she breathed. They both ran. Nathan took the stairs 3 at a time. He burst into the spare room. The window was shattered. Cold air poured in, and Grace stood in the middle of the room, staring at a rock on the floor. A piece of paper was tied around it. Nathan crossed to her. "Are you hurt?" Grace shook her head. She pointed at the rock. Nathan knelt and untied the paper. He unfolded it. The message was written in thick black ink, the letters jagged and angry. "You cannot run. You belong to me. Come home, or everyone you love will burn." It was unsigned, but Nathan knew who had sent it. Margaret was making her move. Morning came with fresh snow. Nathan stood outside Ruth Palmer's shop watching the street. People were already gathering. Word had spread about the meeting at the church. Some came out of curiosity. Others came because they smelled blood in the water. Small towns loved a scandal. Nathan did not care why they came, only that they did. Grace emerged from the shop. She wore a simple dress that Ruth had altered to fit her. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was pale but composed. She looked at Nathan. "I am ready," she said. "Are you certain?" "Yes." Nathan studied her. The rock through the window had shaken her, but it had not broken her. If anything, it had hardened her resolve. Margaret had made a mistake. She had shown fear, and fear was a weakness Nathan could exploit. Ruth joined them. She carried a basket covered with a cloth. "Bread," she explained, "for after. We will need to eat when this is done." Reverend Carter arrived next. He looked sober. His hands did not shake. "I spoke to the church council this morning," he said. "I told them about my struggles with drink. I told them I would resign if they wished. They asked me to stay." "Good," Nathan said. The Reverend looked at Grace. "I also told them about you, about what Margaret has done. How did they respond?" "Some believed me, some did not. But they will all be at the church. They will hear the truth." Dr. Brennan was the last to arrive. He carried a leather satchel. Inside were his notes, his test results, the evidence. His face was grim. "I received a visit last night," he said. "From who? Sheriff Hayes. He told me to keep my mouth shut. Said if I testified, he would make sure I lost my medical license." "And what did you tell him?" Dr. Brennan smiled thinly. "I told him to go to hell." Nathan nodded. "Then let us go." They walked together through the snow toward the church. It sat at the center of town, a white wooden building with a tall steeple. The doors were open. People streamed inside. Nathan counted at least 50, maybe more. The entire town, it seemed, had come to watch. Sheriff Hayes stood on the steps. His hand rested on his pistol. He watched Nathan approach. His eyes were cold. "This is a mistake, Cross. We will see. If you cause trouble, I will arrest you. I am not the one you should be arresting, Sheriff." Hayes's jaw tightened, but he stepped aside. Nathan led the group into the church. The pews were packed. Every face turned to watch them enter. Nathan scanned the crowd. He saw Ruth's neighbors, Dr. Brennan's patients, Reverend Carter's congregation. And there in the front row, sitting alone and perfectly composed, was Margaret Harlow. She wore black, a mourning dress appropriate for a widow. Her hair was pinned beneath a modest bonnet. Her hands were folded in her lap. She looked like a woman in prayer. When Grace entered, Margaret's eyes flicked toward her, just for a moment. And in that moment, Nathan saw something cold and calculating. "She knows," he thought. "She knows we are coming for her, and she is ready." Reverend Carter walked to the front of the church. He stood at the pulpit and raised his hands. The crowd quieted. "My friends," he began, "we are gathered here today not for worship, but for truth." A murmur ran through the crowd. Margaret's face remained serene. Reverend Carter continued, "8 months ago, Thomas Sullivan died in a fire. We mourned him. We buried him. We called it a tragic accident." His voice grew stronger. "But what if it was not an accident? What if Thomas Sullivan was murdered?" The murmur grew louder. Someone shouted, "That is blasphemy!" Reverend Carter did not flinch. "I have evidence," he said. "Testimony, medical reports, and I have a witness." He gestured to Grace. "Thomas Sullivan's daughter will speak, and you will listen." Grace stood. She walked slowly to the front. Every eye followed her. She stopped beside the pulpit and turned to face the crowd. For a moment she said nothing. She simply looked at them, at the people who had watched her suffer in silence, at the neighbors who had turned away. Then she spoke. "My name is Grace Sullivan," she said. "I am 20 years old. I am carrying the child of Daniel Fletcher, the man I loved and intended to marry. And for the past 8 months I have been tortured by the woman who calls herself my guardian." A gasp rippled through the church. Margaret did not move. Grace continued. Her voice was steady, clear. She described the beatings, the starvation, the cold water treatments, the poisoned tea. She held up her arms and pushed back her sleeves. The bruises were visible, yellow and green and purple. Layers of them, weeks of them. Some people in the crowd looked away. Others leaned forward. Margaret sat perfectly still. When Grace finished, Reverend Carter nodded to Dr. Brennan. The doctor stood and presented his findings: blood tests, medical examinations, evidence of lead poisoning, evidence of repeated trauma. He spoke in clinical terms, but the horror was clear. Ruth Palmer testified next. She described seeing Grace with black eyes, split lips, burns on her hands. She admitted she had done nothing, and she wept as she spoke. "I am ashamed," she said. "I am ashamed of my silence, but I will be silent no more." The crowd shifted, uncomfortable, guilty. Nathan watched Margaret. She had not reacted, had not spoken, but her hands folded in her lap were white-knuckled. Finally, Nathan stood. He walked to the front. He did not introduce himself. He simply spoke. 8 months ago, Thomas Sullivan and Daniel Fletcher died in a fire. You were told it was an accident. But I have investigated, and I have found evidence that suggests otherwise. He pulled a piece of paper from his coat. "This is a land deed," he said, "for the property where Thomas Sullivan's forge stood. 6 months before his death, Thomas tried to sell that land, but Margaret Harlow convinced him to wait, to hold on to it, because the value was about to increase. "How do you know this?" someone shouted. "Because I spoke to the land agent," Nathan said. He remembers the conversation. He remembers Margaret insisting that Thomas not sell. He holds up another paper, and this is a death certificate for a man named Robert Klein. He died in Wyoming Territory 3 years ago, in a fire. His widow's name was Margaret Thorne. The crowd erupted. Voices overlapped. Accusations, denials, questions. Sheriff Hayes stood. "That is enough." "It is not enough," Nathan said. He turned to Margaret. She was looking at him now, really looking. Her eyes were black and empty. "How many, Margaret? How many men have you killed?" Margaret stood. Her voice when she spoke was calm, almost gentle. "You are a stranger, Mr. Cross. You do not know me. You do not know this town. You come here with your accusations and your self-righteousness, but you are nothing. Just another man who thinks he can save the day." "I am not trying to save the day," Nathan said. "I am trying to save her." He pointed to Grace. Margaret laughed. "Save her? From what?" "From me. I gave her a home. Food. Shelter. She was nothing when I married her father, a burden. And I took her in." "You poisoned her," Nathan said flatly. "Prove it." "Dr. Brennan has already proven it." Margaret turned to the doctor. "Samuel," she said sweetly, "You have known me for years. Do you truly believe I am capable of such things?" Dr. Brennan met her eyes. "Yes," he said quietly, "I do." Margaret's smile faltered, just for a second. Then it returned. "This is absurd," she said. "Grace is disturbed, unstable. She has been since her father died. Ask anyone. Ask the sheriff." All eyes turned to Sheriff Hayes. He stood in the back, his face unreadable. Slowly he walked to the front. He looked at Margaret, then at Grace, then at Nathan. When he spoke, his voice was tired. "I have known Margaret Harlow for 10 years, he said. "She is my cousin, my blood. And I wanted to believe she was a good woman, wanted someone asked." Hayes pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "Last night Mr. Cross challenged me to do my job, to investigate, so I did." He unfolded the paper. "This is a telegram from the sheriff's office in Cheyenne, Wyoming. 3 years ago, a woman named Margaret Thorne was investigated for the death of her husband, Robert Klein. The case was inconclusive, not enough evidence. But the investigating officer noted that Margaret left town immediately after, and that 2 previous husbands had also died under suspicious circumstances." The church was silent. Hayes looked at Margaret. "I am sorry, cousin, but I am placing you under arrest." Margaret did not move. Her face was a mask. Then slowly she smiled. "You think you have won," she said. "You think locking me in a cell will solve anything. But you are wrong." She reached into her dress. Nathan saw the movement. He lunged forward, but he was too late. Margaret pulled out a small vial. She uncorked it and raised it to her lips. Grace screamed. Dr. Brennan shouted. Sheriff Hayes drew his gun, but Margaret was faster. She drank. The liquid disappeared. She lowered the vial and looked at Grace. "You will never be free of me," she said. "Even in death I will haunt you." Then she collapsed. Dr. Brennan rushed forward. He knelt beside her, checked her pulse, her breathing. After a moment he looked up. His face was pale. "She is gone." The crowd erupted. People surged forward. Sheriff Hayes shouted for order. But Nathan was not looking at the chaos. He was looking at Grace. She stood frozen, staring at Margaret's body. Her face was white. Her hands trembled. Nathan crossed to her. He put his hand on her shoulder. "It is over," he said softly. Grace did not respond. She simply stared. And then quietly she began to cry. Not the silent tears she had shed before, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. Nathan pulled her into his arms. He held her as she wept. As the town erupted around them, as Margaret Harlow lay dead on the church floor. It was over. But Nathan knew the hardest part was just beginning, because surviving was only the first step. Learning to live after survival, that was the real battle. And Grace Sullivan had only just begun to fight. 3 days after Margaret Harlow's death, the town of Iron Creek held a funeral. Not for Margaret, for Thomas Sullivan and Daniel Fletcher. Sheriff Hayes had ordered the forge site excavated. They found what Nathan suspected they would find: traces of blasting powder, a fuse line leading from outside the building, and 2 bodies buried in the rubble that showed no signs of trying to escape. They had been unconscious when the fire started, probably drugged. The town turned out for the reburial, every man, woman, and child. They filled the cemetery. They stood in the snow and listened as Reverend Carter spoke about justice delayed but not denied, about truth rising from ash, about the sins of silence. Grace stood between Nathan and Ruth Palmer. She wore black. Her face was pale but dry. She had cried all her tears in the days following Margaret's death. Now she was hollow, empty, a vessel waiting to be filled. When the service ended, people approached her. Some apologized. Some offered condolences. Some said nothing, just touched her arm or squeezed her hand. Grace accepted it all with the same blank expression. She was present but not present, there but not there. Nathan understood. He had been the same way after Sarah and Emma. The world continued. People spoke. Life moved forward. But you remained frozen in that moment of loss, unable to step back into the flow of time. It would pass. Eventually. But not today. After the funeral, Ruth brought Grace back to the shop. Nathan followed. They sat in the parlor. The fire burned. No one spoke. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was necessary. A pause between chapters. Finally, Grace stirred. She looked at Nathan. "What happens now?" she asked. "You heal," Nathan said. "How one day at a time." Grace's hand moved to her stomach. The baby had quickened a week ago, small flutters, signs of life in the midst of death. "I do not know how to do this," she said quietly. "Be a mother. Alone." "You are not alone," Ruth said firmly. "You have me. You have the Reverend. You have Dr. Brennan. And you have me," Nathan added. Grace looked at him. For how long, Nathan hesitated. He had been thinking about that question for days. His original purpose in coming to Iron Creek was complete. Margaret Harlow, also known as Margaret Thorne, was dead. Justice in a fashion had been served. He could leave, return to the mountains, resume his solitary life. But when he thought about leaving, about riding away from this town and this girl, something in his chest tightened, a physical pain, as if his body was refusing the command his mind gave. "I am not going anywhere," he said. Grace studied him. "Why?" "Because I do not want to. That is not a reason." "Yes." Nathan's voice was barely above a whisper. "It is." The days that followed settled into a rhythm. Grace stayed with Ruth. Nathan took a room at the boarding house on the edge of town. Every morning he came to the shop. He helped Ruth with heavy lifting. He repaired things that needed repairing. And he sat with Grace. They did not talk much. Grace was still finding her voice, still learning to exist in a world where Margaret no longer controlled every breath she took. But Nathan's presence seemed to steady her. When she woke from nightmares, gasping and disoriented, Ruth would fetch Nathan. He would sit in the chair beside Grace's bed and talk. Not about anything important, just the sound of his voice, the rhythm of it, until Grace's breathing slowed and she slept again. Dr. Brennan visited weekly. He monitored Grace's health. The lead levels in her blood were dropping. The tremors in her hands had lessened. Her color was better. Physically, she was healing. Emotionally, was harder to measure. One afternoon, 2 weeks after the funeral, Grace came downstairs wearing a coat and boots. "I want to see it," she said. "See what Ruth asked." "The forge." Nathan and Ruth exchanged a look. "Are you certain?" Ruth asked gently. Grace nodded. "I need to." Nathan drove her in Ruth's wagon. The forge sat at the far end of town, near the river. The building was still standing, but barely. The roof had collapsed. The walls were blackened. The door hung open like a broken jaw. Nathan helped Grace down from the wagon. She walked slowly toward the ruins. He stayed a few steps behind, ready to catch her if she fell, ready to leave if she asked. Grace stopped at the threshold. She looked inside. The interior was gutted. Ash and debris covered everything. In the corner, Nathan could see the remnants of the bellows, the anvil, soot-stained but intact. "My father built this," Grace said. She spoke to the air, to the ghosts. "When I was 5, he let me help. I handed him nails. He let me think I was doing important work." "You were," Nathan said. Grace stepped inside. The floor creaked beneath her feet. She walked to the anvil. She ran her hand over the surface. It was cold and rough. "I used to watch him work," she said. "He would heat the metal until it glowed. Then he would hammer it, shape it, turn something formless into something useful." She looked at Nathan. He said that was what life did to people. Heated them, hammered them, made them stronger. He was right. Grace's eyes filled. "I miss him so much, I know." She looked around the ruined space. "Can it be rebuilt?" Nathan considered. The structure was damaged but salvageable. It would take work, money, time. "But yes," he said, "it can be rebuilt." Grace nodded slowly. "Then I want to rebuild it." "Why?" "Because it was his, and now it is mine, and I will not let her take this from me too." Over the next month, Nathan and Grace worked on the forge. Nathan did the heavy labor. Grace did what she could. She cleared debris. She salvaged tools. She drew plans for the new roof. People noticed. At first they whispered, "A pregnant woman doing manual labor, scandalous, improper." But as the days passed, the whispers changed. They watched Grace lift beams and hammer nails, her belly growing, her determination unwavering. And they began to respect her. Some even came to help. A miner donated lumber. A carpenter offered his skills for free. Women brought food. Slowly the forge took shape. New walls, new roof. The anvil, cleaned and polished, sat in the center like an altar. Ruth watched the transformation with quiet pride. "You are your father's daughter," she told Grace one evening. Grace smiled, genuine, unrehearsed. The first light Nathan had seen break through the clouds that shadowed her face. "I am trying to be." The spring came early that year. Snow melted. Flowers pushed through the earth, and Grace's belly swelled with life. She moved back into her father's house, the house that had been her prison under Margaret. But it was hers now, truly hers. Sheriff Hayes had confirmed it. Margaret's will, such as it was, left everything to Grace. The house, the forge, even a small sum of money Margaret had hidden. "Blood money," Grace said when she learned of it, "from the men she killed." "What will you do with it?" Nathan asked. Grace thought for a long moment. "Give it away," she said finally, "to people who need it more than I do." She donated the money to Reverend Carter's church. He used it to start a fund for widows and orphans. They called it the Thomas Sullivan Memorial Fund. Grace attended the dedication ceremony. She stood at the front of the church, her hand on her belly, and thanked everyone who had stood with her, who had spoken when it mattered. The weeks passed into months. Winter gave way to early spring. Grace's belly grew steadily. By April, she was visibly pregnant. By May, the baby was active, kicking and turning. The town watched her transformation with a mixture of admiration and quiet shame. And then she did something unexpected. She forgave them, the ones who had stayed silent, the ones who had looked away. "I was angry," she said, "for a long time, but anger is a weight, and I am tired of carrying weight. So I choose to forgive, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." The church was silent. Then, one by one, people began to weep, not out of sadness, out of relief, out of gratitude for a grace they had not earned. Nathan watched from the back pew, and he realized something. Grace Sullivan was not a victim waiting to be saved. She was a survivor choosing to heal, and in doing so, she was healing everyone around her. That night, Nathan walked Grace home. The air was warm, the first warm night of spring. They walked slowly. Grace's hand rested on her belly. The baby was active tonight, kicking, turning. "He is restless," Grace said. I think it is a boy." Grace smiled. "I do not know why. Just a feeling. What will you name him?" Grace stopped walking. She looked up at the stars. "Thomas," she said, "for my father. And Daniel, for his father." She looked at Nathan. "Thomas Daniel Cross." Nathan's breath caught. "Cross. If you will have us." Nathan stared at her. "Grace, She held up her hand. "I am not asking you to marry me out of obligation," she said. "I am not asking you to be his father because I need rescuing. I am asking because I love you." Nathan felt the words hit him like a physical blow. "You do not know me," he said. "I know you pulled me out of a river when you could have walked away. I know you stayed when you could have left. I know you built a forge with me, sat with me through nightmares, listened when I needed to speak, and stayed silent when I needed quiet." Grace stepped closer. "I know you, Nathan Cross, and I love you." Nathan's throat closed. He wanted to say it back. Wanted to tell her that somewhere between the river and the forge, between the silences and the small daily acts of care, he had fallen completely and irrevocably in love with her. But the words stuck. Grace smiled. "It is all right," she said. "You do not have to say it. Just stay. Be here. Be his father. Be my husband. That is all I ask." Nathan found his voice. "It is not all you should ask," he said roughly. "You deserve more than a broken man with ghosts. Then give me the broken man. I will help you put the pieces back together." Nathan pulled her close. He rested his forehead against hers. "Are you certain?" "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." He kissed her, gentle, careful, as if she were made of glass. Grace kissed him back, fierce, insistent, as if to prove she was made of iron. When they broke apart, Nathan said the words he had been holding. "I love you, Grace Sullivan. I have loved you since the moment you opened your eyes by the fire and asked me why I saved you." Grace's eyes filled. "Then marry me." "Yes." "When?" "Tomorrow. Next week. Whenever you want." Grace's laughter rang out, clear as a bell, joyful in a way Nathan had never heard from her before. "How about June?" she said. "When the wildflowers bloom. June it is." The wedding took place on the 15th of June, 1883. The church was filled to capacity, every pew packed. People stood along the walls. Children sat on the floor. Ruth Palmer had made Grace's dress, simple cream-colored cotton. No lace, no fuss, just clean lines and careful stitching. The dress accommodated Grace's belly, now 8 months swollen. She looked radiant, not despite the pregnancy, because of it. Nathan stood at the altar. He wore his best shirt. His hair was trimmed, his beard neat. Dr. Brennan stood beside him as best man. The doctor had become a friend, a true one, the kind forged in fire. Reverend Carter presided. His hands shook slightly, but his voice was clear and strong. He had not touched alcohol in 4 months. He attended meetings in the church basement twice a week with other men fighting the same battle. He was winning. One day at a time, the church doors opened. Grace appeared. She walked alone. No one to give her away. Because she was not property to be transferred. She was a woman making a choice. But halfway down the aisle she paused. She looked at Ruth Palmer sitting in the front pew. Ruth's eyes were red. She clutched a handkerchief. Grace extended her hand. "Will you walk with me?" she asked quietly. Ruth's face crumpled. She stood, took Grace's hand. Together they walked the rest of the way. When they reached the altar, Ruth kissed Grace's cheek. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered. Grace squeezed her hand. "Thank you for everything." Ruth returned to her seat. Grace turned to Nathan. He looked at her and felt his chest constrict, not with pain, with something else, something he had thought dead. Joy. Reverend Carter began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Nathan Cross and Grace Sullivan." He paused. "And to celebrate the family they are creating, not just in name, but in love, in commitment, in the choice to stand together against whatever storms may come." Nathan and Grace faced each other. They held hands. Reverend Carter spoke the traditional vows. But when it came time for Nathan and Grace to speak, they had written their own. Nathan went first. "Grace Sullivan," he said. His voice was steady. "I came to this town hunting a ghost. I found you instead, and you showed me that life is not about avenging the dead. It is about honoring them by living well, by choosing love over hate, hope over despair." He took a breath. "I promise to stand with you, to build with you, to raise this child with you, to be the husband you deserve and the father this baby needs. I promise to see you, always, the way I saw you that first night by the fire, as strong, as worthy, as enough." Grace's eyes were wet. She smiled through the tears. "Nathan Cross," she said, "you saved my life, but more than that, you gave me back my voice. You reminded me that I am not defined by what was done to me, but by what I choose to do now." She placed his hand on her belly. The baby kicked, strong and insistent. "I choose you. I choose this family. I choose a life built on truth and love and the knowledge that we are both broken, and we are both healing, and we are both enough." Reverend Carter smiled. "Then by the power vested in me," he said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Nathan, you may kiss your bride." Nathan kissed Grace. The church erupted. Applause, cheers. Someone whistled. Children laughed. It was loud and joyful and entirely inappropriate for a church service. Reverend Carter did not care. He laughed too. The celebration moved to the town square, tables laden with food, a fiddle player, dancing. The whole town came together, not out of obligation, out of genuine happiness. Sheriff Hayes approached Nathan and Grace. He looked uncomfortable, apologetic. "I owe you both an apology," he said. "I should have seen what Margaret was doing. I should have acted sooner." "You are acting now," Grace said gently. "That is what matters." Hayes nodded. He handed Nathan an envelope. "This came for you from Cheyenne." Nathan opened it. Inside was an official document, a pardon. The territorial governor, citing Nathan's role in bringing a serial killer to justice, had cleared his record. The warrant for the incident in Wyoming was voided. "You are a free man," Hayes said. Nathan looked at Grace. "I already was," he said. The celebration continued into the evening. As the sun set, Nathan and Grace slipped away. They walked to the forge. It was completed now, fully operational. Grace had already taken on her first commission, a set of horseshoes for a rancher outside town. They stood inside the building. The air smelled of coal and metal and possibility. "This is ours," Grace said. She leaned against Nathan. "Our future." Nathan wrapped his arms around her. "Our future," he agreed. 1 month later, on the 23rd of July, Grace went into labor. It was fast, frighteningly fast. Dr. Brennan barely arrived in time. Ruth boiled water. Nathan held Grace's hand and tried not to panic as she screamed and pushed and fought to bring new life into the world. And then at dawn, a baby's cry filled the room. "It is a boy," Dr. Brennan announced. He placed the baby on Grace's chest, a healthy, strong boy. Grace wept. She touched the baby's face, his tiny fingers, his dark hair. "Hello, Thomas," she whispered. "Hello, sweet boy. Welcome home." Nathan stared at the child, this tiny, perfect thing. He had been a father before, but Emma had been taken from him when she was too young for him to truly know. This was different. This was a beginning, a chance to do it right. "Can I hold him?" Nathan asked. Grace placed the baby in his arms. Nathan looked down at Thomas Daniel Cross. The baby's eyes were closed. His fists curled. He made small sounds, not quite cries, just noises, announcements of existence. "Hello, son," Nathan said quietly. His voice broke. "I am your father, and I promise I will never leave you. I will teach you to be strong, to be kind, to stand up for people who cannot stand up for themselves. I will teach you everything I know, and I will love you every day of your life." The baby yawned, a huge gummy yawn, then settled into sleep. Grace smiled. "He knows your voice," she said. "He feels safe." Nathan kissed the baby's forehead. Then he kissed Grace. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For giving me a reason to believe in second chances." The weeks turned into months. Thomas grew. He was a fussy baby, loud, demanding, but healthy. Grace nursed him. Nathan walked him when he cried. They took turns with sleepless nights. The town watched the small family with affection. Ruth Palmer became a grandmother in all but name. She knitted blankets. She babysat. She taught Grace how to soothe a colicky infant. Dr. Brennan checked on Thomas weekly, always free of charge. "The baby is thriving," he told Nathan and Grace. "You are doing everything right." Reverend Carter baptized Thomas in September. The church was full again, but this time the atmosphere was joyful, celebratory, a new life, a new generation, proof that hope could grow from ash. That autumn, Ruth Palmer made an announcement. She was opening a home for women in crisis, women fleeing abuse, women with nowhere else to go. She called it Lily's House, after her daughter. The town rallied. They donated funds, materials, time. By winter, Lily's house was operational. 3 bedrooms, a kitchen, a safe place. Grace was Ruth's first volunteer. She taught the women who came to Lily's house how to use the forge, how to shape metal, how to take something broken and make it whole again. "You are doing what your father did for me," Reverend Carter told her one day. "What is that giving people a second chance?" Grace smiled. "It is what someone gave me." 2 years passed. The town of Iron Creek changed, slowly, subtly. It became a place known not for tragedy, but for resilience. People spoke of it as the town that learned to see, the town that chose truth over comfort. Sheriff Hayes retired. A new sheriff was elected, a woman, the first female sheriff in Montana Territory. Her name was Catherine Reeves. She had been one of the women who stayed at Lily's house, who learned to forge at Grace's side. Dr. Brennan expanded his practice. He began traveling to surrounding towns, offering free clinics for those who could not pay. He never married, but he was never alone. The town was his family. Reverend Carter wrote a book about his journey from alcoholism to sobriety. It was published in 1885. He donated all proceeds to the Thomas Sullivan Memorial Fund, and Nathan and Grace built a life. They moved into a cabin on the outskirts of town. Nathan had built it himself, 2 bedrooms, a wide porch, a view of the mountains. It was simple, sturdy, home. Grace ran the forge during the day. Nathan helped when she needed it, but mostly he took care of Thomas. He taught the boy to walk, to talk, to recognize the calls of different birds. In the spring of 1885, Grace discovered she was pregnant again, a girl this time. They named her Sarah, after Nathan's first wife. Some might have found it strange. Grace did not. "She is part of our story," Grace said. "We honor her by remembering." Nathan held his daughter, this tiny girl with Grace's eyes and his stubborn chin, and he felt something he had not felt in years: complete peace. One evening in late summer, Nathan and Grace sat on the porch. Thomas played in the yard. Sarah slept in Grace's arms. The sun was setting. The sky was orange and pink and gold. "Do you ever think about her?" Grace asked quietly. "Margaret." Sometimes, Nathan admitted. "Do you think she could have been saved, redeemed?" Nathan considered. "I think she made choices," he said. "And choices have consequences. Could she have chosen differently? Maybe, but she did not, and we cannot carry the weight of her sins." Grace nodded. She looked at Thomas. He was chasing a butterfly, laughing. "I want him to know," she said, "when he is older. About what happened. About his grandmother. About Margaret. Why? Because secrets are poison." Grace met Nathan's eyes. "And I will not poison my children with silence the way Margaret poisoned me with tea." Nathan reached over and took her hand. "Then we will tell them, when they are ready. We will tell them about the darkness and about how we found light." Grace squeezed his hand. Together, together. The sun dipped below the mountains. The stars emerged across the darkening sky. Tiny points of light scattered like seeds across black earth. Thomas ran to the porch. "Papa," he said, tugging Nathan's sleeve. "Look, stars." Nathan lifted his son. He pointed upward. "That one is called the North Star," he said. "It guides travelers home." Thomas reached up, as if he could touch it. "Home," he repeated. "Yes," Nathan said, "home." Grace watched them, her husband, her son, her daughter, and she thought about the girl she had been, the one pushed into a frozen river, the one who believed she would never be free. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who had chosen to live, to love, to build, to forgive, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Iron Creek was not a perfect town. It still had problems, prejudice, poverty, pain, but it was a town that had learned to look, to see, to act, and that Grace thought was enough. That night, after the children were asleep, Nathan and Grace lay in bed. The window was open. A breeze carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. Grace rested her head on Nathan's chest. She listened to his heartbeat, steady, strong. "Tell me a story," she said. What kind of story? A happy one, Nathan thought. Once upon a time, he began, there was a man who was lost. He wandered alone for years, searching for something he could not name, until one winter night he heard a woman cry for help, and he ran toward the sound, because even though he was lost, he remembered what it meant to care. Grace smiled. "And did he save her?" Nathan kissed the top of her head. "No," he said, "she saved him." Grace closed her eyes. Outside the river ran, the same river that had once tried to claim her life. Now it was just water, moving, flowing, part of the landscape, not a threat, not a memory, just there. And Grace Sullivan Cross, mother blacksmith survivor, slept peacefully in the arms of the man she loved. In the town that had learned to see, in a life she had built from ash and iron and hope. The end was not an ending, it was a beginning, and it was enough. The end.